In this video, we're going to practice converting from one set of units to another set of units. Here's the table of unit conversions that you're going to have for any assignment or test that you do in this course. And so you can see that it's split up into three sort of sections. The imperial unit conversions, so those are the ones that they use in America, like miles, yards, feet, and inches. Metric unit conversions over here on the right, that's sort of our standard in Canada and the rest of the world, although we sort of mix them up a little bit, but that's things like kilometers, meters, and centimeters. And then in the middle column, we have the mix between the two, so how to go back and forth between common, imperial, and metric units. So just as a quick review, two different sets of units can measure the same length. So for example, if you have two different measuring tapes, one that measures in meters and one that measures in centimeters, first starting with the meter measuring tape, you might use that measuring tape to measure the height of a bookshelf and find that it's 2.1 meters. Then you grab your other measuring tape that measures in centimeters, and if you were to measure the same height, you would see that instead your measurement is 210 centimeters. So that's the same height, but represented using two different units. So to turn a measurement from one set of units into another one, we have to multiply by a conversion factor. We get these factors from that table of unit conversions that we saw in the previous slide, and I'll show you how to use that in just a second. But our general strategy for all of these unit conversions is going to be to use the same pattern. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the measurement in the units that we have, and then we're going to multiply it by a fraction from the table of our unit conversions that has the units we have on the bottom and the units we want on top. And what that's going to do is give us the units that we want. So we start with the measurement that we have, we multiply it by a conversion factor with the units we want over the units we have, and that equals the units that we want. And so let's do an example here on the next slide. We're going to convert 189 millimeters into centimeters. So this number that we're given, that's saying, or the same thing as what we have. So we're going to multiply what we have by a fraction that has what we want over what we have, and that's going to get us the units that we want. So let's start to fill that in. What we have is 189 millimeters. Now we're going to multiply by a fraction, and we have to find, using our table, the units that we want and we have. How are those related? So you can see that we want to get to centimeters. So that's the end goal. And we're starting with millimeters. So looking at our table, we're looking for the equation that relates centimeters and millimeters, or millimeters and centimeters. And if we look over here on the right, we'll see that we have a relationship between centimeters and millimeters. So what we want are centimeters. So we put that on the top. 1 centimeter, that comes from the left side of the equation, over the units that we have, which is 10 millimeters. So what we're going to do, we're multiplying what we have, 189 millimeters, times 1 centimeter per 10 millimeters as a fraction. And if you remember your multiplication rules, what we're going to see is that the millimeters cancel out, which is why those go away, and we're left just with the units that we want. But really, as long as we have that pattern of multiplying what we have by what we want over what we have, then we'll get to the right units in the end. So now we have this 189 times 1 over 10. Because the 10 is on the bottom, what we're going to do is use division. This is 189 divided by 10. Again, it's because the 10 is on the bottom of the fraction. That means we're going to use division. So 189 divided by 10 is 18.9 And now the units that we get from using this conversion factor is centimeters. And so that's our final answer. Let's do another example here. I'll go through this one a little faster. And this time we're going to be using imperial units. So we have 8.5 feet, and we want to turn it into inches. So we're starting with what we have, which is 8.5 feet, and we're going to multiply it by a fraction from this table that gets us from feet into inches. So down here on the bottom of the left column, we can see that we have a relationship between feet and inches, and you also see that the shortcut or the shorthand for a foot and for inches is mentioned here. So if you see that on a test and you can't remember, is it one little dash for feet and two little dashes for inches, go to the table and you can check that for yourself. So we have 8.5 feet times, and now we want to fill in this fraction from this table. So the units that we want go on top, that's 12 inches, and the units that we have go on the bottom, that's 1 foot. And then we can confirm that those units are going to cross each other out. So the feet are going to cancel out. And the end calculation that we have, this time you see that the number from the conversion factor is on the top. So we have 8.5 times 12 over 1. So that's the same as 8.5 times 12. And when I put this into my calculator, I get 102, and my units are inches. So 8.5 feet is the same as 102 inches. In our final example, we're going to convert 10.5 yards into meters. So we're starting with 10.5 yards, that's what we have, and we're going to multiply it by a fraction, and now we're looking for a relationship between yards and meters. Now yards is an imperial unit and meters is a metric unit. So we're going to look in this middle column, and sure enough, here we go. We found the relationship between yards and meters. So I'm putting the yards on the bottom because that's what I have already. So 1 yard on the bottom, and on the top I have 0.9144 meters. Those are the units that I want. One thing to note is you see the squiggly equal sign in that column. That's because imperial to metric don't agree perfectly. They are approximations. So 1 yard is approximately 0.9144 meters, but not exactly that. And that's why there's a squiggle equal sign instead of an exact equal sign. So now we have our multiplication ready to go. My yards units are canceling and leaving me with just meters. So that's just a confirmation that I've put my 2 units in the right place of that fraction. And now what I have is 10.5 times 0.9144 over 1. So it's a little weird. We don't often see a decimal in the top of a fraction or in the bottom of a fraction. But for the sake of our math, it's following the same rules. So we have 10.5 times 0.9144. And I get 9.6 and a whole bunch of decimals, 0, 1, 2, and my units are meters. Now we're told in the problem to round to 2 decimal places if necessary. So we're going to round to 2 decimal places. That would be 9.60 meters.